This conference will now be recorded.
I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Hi, I'm speaking. Can you hear me? I just heard Barb.
I'm logged into the GoToMeeting separately. Can you hear me if I'm speaking now? I've turned my computer on, not the room.
Yes.
Okay.
Hear you
Yeah.
fine.
Yes.
Okay, but your computer should theoretically be muted.
I just turned it on.
right? But it,
I know I will mute it, but I'm just making sure that it's getting from us to them. It's just not getting through the room.
right, what I don't know is whether it's getting through the computer or getting through microphone. All right, can folks hear us now?
That's coming through me. Oh,
I hear you now.
I can
I
hear
heard
you.
well. Except now I'm not hearing anyone.
Can you say something, Paul?
can someone online? That's what.
Hello? I heard just a brief couple of words. That's all.
I can hear Linda just fine.
Not the folks running it, though.
And are we being heard?
Oh,
Yeah, yes.
yeah,
Now we
now,
hear you.
yes.
Now we can hear you.
Is anyone hearing the folks at City Hall?
No.
No.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yes.
I just heard,
One
yes.
It's
Yeah, no.
Carolyn. Yes, I can hear you, Paul.
What?
All right.
Can someone online speak?
Hi, this is Linda Bailey. I can hear you guys now.
Okay, we're just going to go with that. We're using a laptop for the audio, and we're just going to go with that.
Hey,
All right, thanks for your patience, everybody. Steve Locke, our acting city manager, twice introduced himself and said that he is excited to be here, that he's here on Jesse Baker's behalf, who unfortunately was not able to attend as she's out of town on a well-earned vacation. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for sticking with the tech. We're here to talk about core government, and Jesse's going to lead us off.
Okay, so we just have a brief presentation about the city of 2024, including the process and why are we doing this? The first, what is City Plan 2024? It is the city's overarching policy statement about what we want South Burlington to be and what we are striving for in the coming decades. It sets a shared vision for the community's future, guides city council and city administration priorities, guides adoption of changes to the land development regulations and capital investments, provides support for grant funding applications, includes elements required by statute and statewide planning goals that are either included in our priorities or at least discussed. And why update it? By state statute, the plan is effective for 8 years, and this one expires in February of 2024. So we have to, the map that you're seeing is our current future land use map. It's from our 2016 plan. So that's one of the elements that we will be updating through this process. But that gives you an idea of one of the pieces of information that would be in the. So can everyone online mute themselves, please?
Jesus.
So this is our adoption timeline. It's approximate, but this is the goal. Right now, we're in that orange box of initial input from approximately February to May of this year, 2023. Includes these public meetings, additional committee input from our volunteer committees that are standing committees in the city for the most part, department input from our professional staff departments, drafting of the sections and the objectives to go in the plan itself, and review of those sections and objectives by the Planning Commission. Into the yellow box will be approximately May to August. There'll be additional discussion and editing by the Planning Commission, additional feedback on those draft sections and objectives by the committees, the departments, and opportunities for the public to provide further comment. There will be the formal public hearings process at both the Planning Commission and the City Council. That will occur hopefully between September and November of this year, with a goal of adopting the plan by City Council by December of 2023. The goal for that is set for December when the plan expires in February, because that's when the City Council ends up deep into budget season. And we want to be able to take a little bit off their plate and get this done as early as we can before they get into that. And if we don't have a plan adopted by February, it has a lot of implications for how the City Council can operate and how the city can run. So that is our goal. I think of it as Thanksgiving, but effectively by December. So I just wanted to share a little bit. There are some statistical knowns that we've been throwing around in our discussions of the city plan. These are pieces of information that we know. These are not things that we could change with different policies. These are things that were very likely to occur. This is just a little graph of homes added annually by the number of zoning permits. So it does vary quite a bit from year to year, but you can see there's a general up in the red dotted line, and it's somewhere around 150. We have a few statistics there about annual population growth, annual housing unit growth, and some additional projections. We're looking at somewhere between 1% and 2% of both population and housing unit growth into the future. And that's something that we are anticipating. Our population is growing in South Burlington and in Chittenden County as a whole. So these are things that we do need to be planning for. As I said, the number of homes added per year is somewhere around 150. It's 143. The overall housing mix is about half single family, 6% duplex, and that doesn't look right, but sort of approximately half multifamily. I just threw 2 little graphs. This is our housing mix overall of our total housing. And this is our housing mix since 2000. So in our additional, the housing that has been added to since 2000 has been significantly more multifamily than single family. Again, there's a little bit of more projection of our additional population growth and additional housing growth. The other thing to note is that our population is diversifying. We are increasing in our amount of diversity in the city. And as you can see down farther below, 11% of residents speak a language other than English at home, 11% are foreign born, and 24% include a person with a disability. Also, we're an aging population. The median age is expected to decline slightly in the next few years. It's not as significant as it could be, and it is in many other parts of the state, but we are still experiencing some of the same trend that others are. Just a few pieces of information about our land use. About 51% of the city is under a conservation instrument of some kind, is public land or has regulatory restrictions. Our currently built areas are about 41% of the city. And since 2010, approximately 85% of new housing that has been approved has been within or immediately adjacent to the transit overlay district. So it does, as the note says, it doesn't include housing that was approved prior to that time and is currently being built, but things that have been approved since that date. Our transit overlay district is a proxy for where we would like to see denser development, because we do have some more transportation options in that area. A few transportation knowns. There are a significant number of households that have no vehicle, around 12% or so. There is a significant flux between our nighttime and our daytime population. There are a lot of people who travel out of South Burlington to work, and there are a lot of people who travel into South Burlington to work, and very few, relatively speaking, who both live and work in South Burlington. A couple of policy knowns that we wanted to state up front. The city plan is an update. We're thinking of as an update to the 2016 plan. We're not sort of throwing that plan away and starting over. There were a lot of good things in that plan, but we are anticipating of ramping up some of the intentions of that plan, and putting some more measurable objectives in the new plan. In 2022, sort of last summer or so, the City Council adopted a climate action plan. Those targets will be incorporated into our city plan. The plan will also strive to meet the statutory option for an enhanced energy plan. That's a program through the state. And the plan will be data driven. We would like to use studies and reports undertaken by the city since the adoption of the 2016 plan. Significant work has been done in various areas, and we would like to incorporate as much as we can into our new plan. So going a little bit into the actual city government, here is our organizational chart. As you can see, there are a lot of different departments that function under our city government. So city clerk's office, fire department, public works, city managers, planning and zoning, library, police, and rec and parks, and all of the people and subgroups that work under all of those umbrellas. So there's a lot that the city does, and there's a lot that the city could do, and that's mostly what we're here to talk about today is city services and community needs moving forward. So then a few pieces of information. Call volume from the fire department has been steadily increasing. The police department has had some, well, both actually, the fire department and police department have had staffing questions and struggles and have had certainly changes in what kinds of calls they're receiving, how they need to respond to calls and some more. So we're going to talk a little bit about our public works. So there's 120 miles of city maintained water pipes, 82, these are all approximate, 82 miles of city owned and maintained roads, 71.5 miles of either sidewalk or shared use path. I combined those two numbers. And 367 acres of open space. As you can see on the bottom left, the incidence of homelessness in Vermont has been increasing, especially since the pandemic. And I just wanted to show a quick map of the city of South Burlington and how we are dividing it into a few areas for discussion for the city plan. So southwest, southeast, northwest, central, Kennedy, and north. So now actually into the core of the plan. The City Council and Planning Commission have been working on draft 2024 vision and goal statements. These are primarily updates to the vision and goals statements that were in the 2016 plan. But they are inclusive, fair, and just, human focused, climate resilient, and opportunity oriented. And the idea is that these are not sections unto themselves in the plan, but they would be threads that will run through the entire plan and would be touched on in all of the topic areas. So just a little bit, that was all I have for sort of background. I know that was a lot of information and a lot of numbers and statistics, but it just gives a good background foundational sense about what we're doing in South Burlington and the changes that we are facing and what we need to be incorporating into our city plan. So just a few discussion, we're going to move into the discussion portion and a few discussion ground rules. Treat all participants with kindness and respect, value a diversity of views and opinions, direct comments to the facilitator and not each other, and critique ideas rather than individuals. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to our facilitator, Joe Sigali.
Thanks, Kelsey. Hi, everybody. Normally I would stand while I'm doing this, but just to make sure everybody can hear me, I'm gonna sit and kind of keep my eye on the screen as well as the folks here in the room. Just a little bit about myself. My name's Joe Sigali. I recently retired from the Agency of Transportation. I was there for about 10 years. I've been worked at the regional level, the state level for consulting, worked for municipalities when I was consulting, particularly done a bunch of work for South Burlington at different times, mostly in transportation planning. That's my main background, but at the agency, I was the director of policy planning and research. Also, I'm currently serving on, currently for 8 years now, the Planning Commission in Huntington, where I live. And so I can, it's great to be here. And Huntington's a little smaller, but we have the same kind of challenges and issues a lot of times that we're dealing with. And so thanks, it was great. When Paul contacted me, I'm like, yeah, this sounds like a lot of fun and I'm happy to do it. And so we're gonna take another chance here on technology. So we have this poll, this tool called Mentimeter, and we have a few questions we're gonna ask people, and you can answer this through your computer or through your smartphone. And if you're at home, you may wanna look at your smartphone, even if you're on your computer. It might be just easier so you don't have to switch back and forth. But what you wanna do is go into a browser like Google or Safari or Firefox, whatever you use, and just type in Menti, MENTI.com. And you'll see that window pop up, just like it's showing here on the presentation on the right. And then go in and enter the number 74322492. You don't have to enter a space. It'll do that automatically for you. So we're going to have to switch over to it.
Yep.
And on the, it's running on the other, oh, okay.
I heard 7432 was the last four.
7432 and then 2492. And I think, you know, we're doing like 10 other meetings. So unfortunately, you're the guinea pigs for us tonight. We'll see how well this goes. But the idea is to get some feedback from people in real time and just to kind of warm people up a little bit. But yeah, you were right. You had it up. Yeah.
I apologize. What's the number again?
No, no need to apologize. The number is 7432-2492. Does everybody have that? You can give me the other keyboard when we call it back up. And I'll just run it. Yeah. Okay. Is everybody in okay?
I think so.
Okay, so let me see here. This mouse is just really super sensitive. God. Okay, first question. So are you guys seeing the first question on the screen? Hopefully. Oh yeah, you can put in your name, you don't, or you don't. You can just skip that one, yeah. No. Okay, are you being asked the question? Oh, okay, we're jumping in this one. This is just a quick quiz on how much you know about South Burlington. When did South Burlington become a city? So it's 1791, 1971, or 1927. Time's up. Okay, so the right answer is 1971, which is pretty interesting because South Burlington as a city, not very old, right? You know, it's part of Burlington originally, and I think it split off back then. So, you know, it's been 50, 52 or 53 years. Did I do the math right?
Split off 100.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. All right. So, you know, I think that's pretty fascinating. All right, that was just a quick question. Yeah, I know. You know what 1927 is? That's, yeah, the flood. Okay. So this is just, you actually will be given you can put in 3 words if you want, but what one word best describes your mood at this moment? Are you happy, sad, excited, frustrated? Whatever. Oh, good. That's good. When I was testing it, I put in hungry too, earlier on. Entertain. No, that's great. Happy, hungry. Okay. Great. They keep coming in. Interested. That's good. I'm glad you're interested. It's more like, I think tonight we're interested to hear from you all. So that's a pretty good range of moods that are up there. It seems like interested is kind of coming out top, as well as hungry. It must be the time of day, I guess, time of night. Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for doing that. So this is just an overall question of what activities do you do in South Burlington? Kind of goes back to that slide that Kelsey showed about how many people live and worked here. And so you can pick all that, apply. Yeah, if I was going to answer this, definitely shop or services. I did used to work here for a while. My office was in South Burlington for quite a while. It was great, right over the old EMS. It was a good place to be, actually. Yeah. No, yeah, no students. Okay, that's right. Or there's, yeah, just Okay, I'm going to keep moving along here so we can get to discussion. So just to remind you, what we want to do tonight is really focus on these four goals, right? And think about them relative to city services. And so and the goals, just to go over them again, are inclusive, fair, and just, being human focused, climate resilience, and then opportunity oriented. And so this next slide, I'm just going to ask you, as we talk about these, what do you think is most relevant? And this is hard. This is a hard question, but what do you think is most relevant to the topic of community services when we think about these goals? Maybe where are the most opportunities, or maybe where's the most work needed is another way to think about it. And then it'll kind of walk you through to how you rank those. Let's see. Did everybody get a chance to answer? I'm gonna track this. So. Yeah, it's a little hard. It is big. Yeah, it's a big question. Yeah. But I can also, this sort of seems logical to me. Overall, with community service, you're ultimately you're serving people, and being equitable in the way those services are provided seems super important. And the other two are as well, but that doesn't. This is sort of what I was expecting. Sometimes it's nice when. Okay, so thank you for doing that. I hope this was sort of fun. And so now we can switch out of this, and we're really just going to have a discussion now. So I don't think, yeah. Great. Thanks everybody online. I hope that worked okay for you there as well. Okay. I kind of like that last screen you had up. Yeah. That's, okay. All right. So what I want to do is just talk about, maybe even just starting with human focus for a little bit, since that was at the top of the list. And overall, what the city staff wants us to think about is, over the next 10 years, what do we want to achieve? That's sort of our time frame, because ultimately this assessment is going to, be looked at by the city staff, by the planning staff, and then come up with some recommendations that then become the plan. I mean, that's a little bit of a simplification, but this is input that's going to help guide the policies that come into the plan. And we're not looking for solutions tonight. We're really just looking for the issues and concerns, opportunities, that sort of thing. So it's okay if you don't have, a solution. Let's just kind of hear what your issues are. So thinking about, being human focused, what do you think the city, when it comes to city services, is doing well? Let's kind of start with the positive, because it's always great if you can kind of build off what's going well. So when it comes to trying to be human focused and city services, does anybody want to kind of start by talking about what they think is going great and how to build off of that?
I'll plant the seed with
Okay.
that and say that I think that it's really incredible the investment that this community made in establishing a library that is multi-generational, and we're seeing that happen every day now, that there's all sorts of different parts of our community have a place that they feel is their own, whether they're a podcaster or a reader or somebody who's doing homework, or a teen, or it's kids with toddlers, and it's created this place that everybody feels that belongs to them in our community. So I'd say that's something that's being done really well.
That's great. Any other thoughts from folks online or in the room here?
I have to say that the library is the one that I was going to talk about as well. I see people of all ages in there. a nice array of things available. Brought my young grandchildren there for the first time a couple, 3 weeks ago. They love the children's area. Works great.
Great, thanks. That was Linda Bailey, right?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Anything else besides the library? South Berlin, yeah, go ahead. Right.
Community to like not only have the library services, but the senior center and a safe, welcoming place for our staff who work. So I think it was just all of it, and then even the surrounding area of city center. It seems like it's kind of starting to, I don't know, see some of what we put in the plan 30 years ago.
Right.
Happening to have like a downtown. The beginnings of one.
Right. Great.
I'm going to expand on that some more too, because I think that I feel like I'm part of the community because I get out in the city, walking, e-bike, bicycling. Every place I go, I feel like a part of a community. And, there's a lot of facilities here that allow us to do that.
Right.
Many suburban areas just don't have. So I think they lack community. I mean, they don't have dog parks. They don't have park facilities, they don't have skating rinks, they don't have shopping malls. I don't really feel like part of the community there, but it's nice to have. There's so many places you can go where you interact with people. So there's, and I feel like that's something that it's been lacking almost every other place I've ever lived. Easy ways to get out and interact with other people in the community.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning the plan, because I remember way back just the South Burlington City Center plan, and it's how it's come to fruition now over many years. And that's why these plans are so important. Sometimes it can be frustrating to wait, but they plant the seed, and then this is what you get with being sustained effort over time by lots of other people.
Chris Shaw has raised.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the human focus of the bike paths that have been an incredible asset for the city. And as we build sidewalks and creating access for that human scale of what we're looking for, I think still need ways to go in the Market Street area as we build the core. And I think the idea of sidewalks and connectivity at that human level is something we can continue to improve upon, what is an extremely good start and is very valuable for the human focus of the city and access for people on foot and by bike, as opposed to making everything pavement and cars. And I think we sense that when we see playgrounds and we see parks, as opposed to parking spaces, parking lots. And take a look at Dorset Street, how it improved when we put sidewalks on both sides in the 1990s and made those sidewalks wide. And with some green trees and stuff. So excellent access there. Thank you.
For that comment. So sidewalks, libraries, the city center, the city hall, and the which includes the library. And what about anything else that folks want to talk about on the positive side of things? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to say something positive about the Wheeler Nature Park. I think it was acquired in the early 1990s by the city, and it's a magnificent. It was a magnificent acquisition. It's got tremendous diversity, much more. If you've been in Red Rocks, it's a forest, but the Wheeler Nature Park has the forest, the wetland, the stream, the grassland, and the shrubland. It's magnificent diversity and habitat for wildlife, and it's a huge park. Unfortunately, it's being encroached on by a development, and we're fighting that at Act 250. But this is something really worth preserving. And also, I wanted to mention that there are 4 or 5 reports about the park that were created by volunteers and by city officials. And I think that there was a tremendous amount of work in figuring out what we wanted to do with that park. I think it really shows a great amount of care by people in this city.
So, thinking, beyond the city borders, what are there any trends that you might be aware of, or sort of opportunities outside of the city that maybe you could take advantage of to make services more human focused? Tough question, but so, initially we were talking about like the strengths of what the city has, but is there something in the surrounding area or just what's happening nationally or even globally that you think that could be applied here in South Burlington? And we're, this is like picking your brains based on your own experiences and maybe the work that you do or whatever. So any thoughts in that direction?
Chris Shaw.
Oh, sorry. I'm really sorry. It's hard for me to see who's talking.
No.
Go ahead, Chris. And actually, it would be great if folks online could turn on their camera while they're talking. It would help us see here in the room.
Sure. I wanted to extend on the area that I just mentioned, the connectivity and the sidewalks. And I think I jumped on your question before it was fully formed. The connectivity I see to Williston and to Colchester on Limekiln Road isn't fully developed yet, and those would be fruitful areas to do so. We certainly have connectivity to Burlington, and we're talking about a bike and pedestrian bridge for even better connectivity, especially for the college students and the Quarry Hill section, which seems a little cut off from the more commercial district and city center core. But you'll see people walking by the wastewater treatment plant at Airport Parkway, coming from Colchester for services here in South Burlington, going through the Chamberlain neighborhood. And that needs to be prioritized, I think, to be safe for those students from St. Michael's. And similarly, we see the connections on Kimball Avenue trying to get to Williston, and certainly on Williston Road as we go down the big hill there. So I'm sorry I didn't answer, I think, where you were going to see examples from, say, California or other states that might be doing things well in those areas. But I'll think about that. Thanks.
Yeah, starting closer and going out further, that's fine. But thanks for tagging that on to that question. I think that is the right place for that to go. And really, these questions are just to get people thinking. Feel free to say whatever you want as I go through this. I'm trying to provide a little bit of structure just for organizational purposes. Okay.
If I could give you more of an answer along those lines, I'd say going for a city center, going for what we see in Burlington, where more of a downtown is created as a pedestrian plaza, and converting those areas to be car-free is where I see a lot of success for what we discover. People find that parking in downtown areas is something that they're used to, and it may not necessarily be required. It's sort of like going into a convenience store with a shopping cart for a bottle of chips, or a bottle of Coke and chips. It seems ridiculous to put one car person access in the middle of a core downtown. And retailers and businesses think, oh, well, 90% of my business comes by car. And the essential scientific facts are it's really about 4% of their business. And the people are arriving on foot.
Yes, please.
Being able to have transportation that's available to all, and yes, it would be great if our city center was more walkable and bikeable, but also with transportation such as buses. So when people are trying to come into this building, you have to get off the bus at Barnes and Noble. And I recognize as this area grows, it hopefully will have a bus line there, but it's really hard for people with mobility issues to get back and forth. And that's what I see as something we could really do in South Burlington, is provide a way to be less dependent on cars.
Great.
So for those online, I'm not sure how far you can hear into the room, but the statement was made that providing additional car-free or car-reduced transportation into city center, including additional bus lines and things to this area, would improve access for all people, but also people with mobility issues.
And just a little housekeeping note here, just so you know that Paul is over here in the corner. You can't see him. He's taking notes, so we're not losing what people are saying. So thanks. All right, let's, what about weaknesses when it comes to being human focused in South Burlington? Is there something that the city should be doing to make progress towards being more human focused, maybe that it's not doing now? Are there any resources that might be missing that would be good to have? Yes.
I think one of the dangers in South Burlington is that cars drive through our city really fast. Too fast. And some of the major thoroughfares like Heinsberg Road, particularly south of the interstate, are very high-speed corridors, and they're becoming much denser occupied.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more houses there, a lot more people wanting to, use alternate forms of transportation, but it's just really dangerous out there. In some areas along Shelburne Road, there's some back ways. There's some back ways to get around, but the most obvious and easiest way is kind of cut off if you're on a bicycle. Because Shelburne Road is just much too dangerous for the vehicle, for other than cars and trucks.
Yeah, I think it's always been challenging for South Burlington with 116, Route 2, Route 7, that are major arteries in your city and carry lots of through traffic, for sure.
And so I think that's one long-term thing to look at. How do you do more park and ride? How do you get more people to park on the periphery and expand our network of bus service and transportation by forcing people not to come into the city with their cars?
Right.
We have Anne online.
Yes, and Representative Pugh, I think.
No longer representative.
Okay.
I'm just a citizen now. And I did not hear the last person, so I may be saying something somewhat similar. I live off of Kennedy Drive, and I feel like that part of South Burlington that is borders Route 7 is a whole different city. And I know that there is, the bike path sort of off of Spear Street down there, but the elementary school, they have a separate elementary school. It feels very unconnected to me. And I'm not quite sure how we do that. So the other piece that I wish we could take better care of is Red Rocks. Red Rocks is our place that connects to the water. And I wish we put more energy into that as well as the rest of the park. I think that
was good. That was a good add-on. I think they fit together. I mean, there's sort of a transportation theme, but you went beyond that as well. I mean, just the connection of the Shelburne Road part of the city and the connection to the lake too. I think those are great observations. And we're on the topic of, again, being human focused, community services. Where's there room for improvement in the city? The question that I'm asking. And so we talked about transportation, one of my favorite topics, but are there other areas, in community services? You think about that chart that Kelsey showed, there's South Burlington has all the services, fire, police, the public works department, water and sewer. I mean, there's lots of services in the city, and those are all critical infrastructure, and you're lucky to have them. Is there room for improvement? Sure.
The airport has been a problem for the city, especially its.
If you hold on for just 1 second, maybe you couldn't hear someone was talking here. Sorry about that. I'll get to you in a second.
It's hard for me to know if you're feeling like your services are spread too thin, or if you're still able to respond in a reasonable amount of time. Like, that's something that I don't know. I don't see that on a daily basis. But with that chart going up and the staffing issues,
I
these are
agree.
things we should be
I
talking
think,
about.
yeah, you know, certainly as population growth, I'm sure we'll agree with it. We're both of our, we're resource thin. And so at some point, you only have enough staffing to respond to a certain number of calls. And sometimes in our business, we typically don't put calls in queue, but that happened basically today. And I think we're at the point, I think the numbers are 23% of the time when you call for an ambulance, you do not get a South Burlington ambulance because we cannot, we're already out. And so we're relying on another community to come in. And so my example is, imagine 1 in 5 customers come to go to the library and you say, sorry, you can't come into our library. We don't have enough staffing. You have to go to somebody else's library. And so what's happened is with our community growth and the impact of substance abuse, mental health are a drain on your city fire police service. Jump in, what did I miss?
Before you go into there, Paul Connor, I was wondering, Chief, could you speak to just sort of taking a slight twist on that? Beyond the sort of amount of call volume, can you talk about, and maybe both chiefs, talk about how the type of what you're seeing in the community is evolving beyond the numbers? Because I think that's part of the discussion here tonight is where are there identified, how's the community changing? So beyond just, straight numbers of growth, but like how is calls different than they were a decade ago, and what do you project in the future?
Yeah, I can start with that. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sean Burks, and I have the privilege of being your police chief. So what we see and have invested in recently that impact both services are a lot of folks that suffer with unmet social service needs. And a way that we've invested in that, in better serving those neighbors, is our partnership with the Howard Community Outreach Team. And those are less than clinicians that are field-based that we or fire will call upon to help people that can't navigate social service, their social service needs, and have de facto called 911. So there's a limit to that, though. The program is staffed essentially 8 to 8, Monday through Friday, with no services overnight or on the weekends. And crisis like crime or fire or EMS calls, they know no day a week and no day of time. So that's been really a complexity that also kind of hampers our ability to be super efficient. So in policing, a little bit different than fire, we do have the luxury of being able to prioritize calls and allow some to sit in a queue, because not everything that we're called upon to do is a 911 emergency per se. And we do have to do that now when we get overrun at times. We are actually doing a fulsome data analysis of our call volume. But what we see is the amount of officer time per call is really growing, and it's related to the mental health crisis that we're talking about at a state and a national level, a lot of the substance use disorder complexities, and also, a growing community that is now experiencing, from what I feel, at least as a professional, the first time of those that are unhoused, living on public land, living in private spaces, to work through those scenarios with people absent our social service partners that can consume an ambulance crew or a couple of police officers for 2-3 hours. That's really what we see. On the crime side, we see a lot of similar crime types. Again, property crime, theft, things of that nature, but in growing number right now. And as criminal justice reform is going on, I feel as though the public is going to soon realize that the critical reform is in the adjudication of cases, and looking at that and doing that work differently with an eye towards effectively reducing recidivism. A path forward that we're experimenting with here is with our Community Justice Center and using a restorative practice in resolving the lion's share of our misdemeanor
I want to come back to this in a second, but I also want to give Mr. please. Is that right? Chance, sorry, you got cut off. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yes. So I wanted to talk about the airport. It's in the middle of the Chamberlain neighborhood, and it's really a bad neighbor for human life in that neighborhood. It hosts, against the will of the people in two votes, town meeting votes we had in Burlington and Winooski, where the F-35 was voted down, and it's against the actual regulations of the military themselves to be doing training with very dangerous military equipment in a populated area. And so this is something that we should make as an objective of the city plan, to put a stop to that training in our city. It's especially focused, as the Air Force said, disproportionately impacting low income and minority populations. So this can't go on. This has got to stop. I've been looking into the legal part of it, and it turns out that the city does have authority, because the state National Guard of every state, the training is under the control of the state, and Vermont has delegated authority to regulate vehicles of every kind to protect the health, safety, welfare, and convenience of the people under a statute, and maybe Ann is familiar with that. So our city has that authority from the state, and the state has authority over the training. This is something we can really press to get removed from our state, from our city. And when you look at I think we heard that from Kelsey that there are 367 acres of open land. 44 of those acres are where housing was torn down in the Chamberlain neighborhood. Once the F-35 goes away, we can rebuild in that neighborhood. We don't have to do urban sprawl out in pristine open fields if we can get that 44 acres back into housing. So there's really, and housing is what is limiting the economic development, according to several articles that have come out in the local media. So there are tremendous need for housing. We need, and especially affordable housing. This is the neighborhood to build it. We have to have as an objective to remove the F-35 so the noise is gone, so we can rebuild in that neighborhood and satisfy that housing need, and stop the pain and suffering that people are undergoing from that 115 decibel noise.
Thank you for that. So I want to just swing back again to the fire and police services. It sounds like, you're you're at your max almost. I mean, and you're doing your best to manage it. That's kind of what I took from what both you guys were saying. And I think that I guess I want to hear from other folks. And do you feel that? Do you experience that in South Burlington? Is that a concern for the citizens of South Burlington? Or is it these guys are managing the load, and maybe you're not seeing it yet, but they're kind of up against, the wall in a sense. And I hope I, captured that okay. But, they're doing a good job managing it, but they're kind of seeing that, it can't go on forever. So any thoughts, concerns, suggestions from folks?
One sort of planted note on that call. We don't have to necessarily think within the departments that exist, but rather the service needs of the community as it evolves. So it may, whatever the need may or may not be served by an existing department, I would, really welcome the feedback on, where are the service needs coming in the future years, regardless of who does it.
Let's just say the microphone, it's not the camera.
Okay, so I was just going to say, I'm actually the chair of the library board of trustees, and I want to give a shout out actually to both of the chiefs, because they have been really great partners with our staff on things that have happened around. And I've had personal things happen in the past and people are very responsive. My question for the two of you is, would we be able to have city funds that could also help with the crisis intervention teams that are within the South Burlington cadre instead of the Howard Center? To be someone on your staffs to help part of that. I'm not sure if it's possible, and I know that you're very thinly staffed, but those are the situations that I see more and more in our community.
In a sense, just broadly to kind of Paul's point, I think partnerships are always the way to go, especially within our work. And so some of it, whether it's Howard Center or in my case, if we can partner with the medical center, if we can keep people out of the emergency room that do not need to be in the emergency room, then that's a win for everybody. So I think at the end of the day, the more we partner with agencies, the better services we can get delivered, because many of these, the 911 has become the de facto, but that impacts way more than just our staff or his staff or you as a resident. So we're transporting a lot of patients to the hospital that don't need to go to the emergency room, but there's no place else to take them.
On the other side, could we increase the partnership with Howard? Again, that's services and people and
money. I mean,
money, absolutely.
Ultimately, it all comes down to where do we put the resources? And I think identifying it in the priority and the plan is what we hope will be an outcome, so that there is an effort at least to focus on that over the next few years.
You don't need to solve it tonight, just getting it down.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's good. Yes.
Just an extension to that question, like about what percentage of people that you're servicing are actually residents of South Burlington versus people coming in from other places to the, shopping or stealing at the shopping center, or, people coming from other parts of the country and, just coming here to travel, or, who knows, bringing their drugs with them, or who knows what they're doing. But, so many of the people that you see in the other paper in those walks, you wonder, okay, a lot of them are from here, but do they actually live here, or do you see a lot of them coming from other places because it's kind of a center?
Sure. So I'll say this, like I've been here 6 months, so some part of it I'm still trying to get a handle on. But the vast majority of our call volume are for people that reside here. And some of that, though, are people that have been relocated here, Sean, during the pandemic. So we have occupancies that are now hosting guests that used to be houseless, that have become high frequency users of our services. Is that a fair way to capture that?
Yes.
But they moved here during the pandemic?
So essentially the hotel voucher program, which has been kind of a topic of late in the legislature, we saw a large influx. It's tapered greatly, but it definitely had a profound impact on the city emergency services.
I guess I just want to say, this isn't necessarily only about South Burlington, but like when I go into Burlington, there's a lot of places that feel a lot less safe than they were in the past. So I guess I just want to say that I think it's really important to continue to support your budgets and your staff and your programs, because we don't want to wind up in a situation where we don't have the emergency services that we should, so like the answering calls, and so I think just the continued investment is extremely important. And I know in the news there's been talk for many years about like police and defunding and things like that. And I just want to kind of say that I'm in favor of making sure we have like the services that you provide our community, and hope that that's reflected in the plan. That it's important what you're doing.
Thank you for that observation and comments. What goes hand in glove with that is also having prominent environment in public spaces, because when you can do that in a really thoughtful way, that is probably one of the best deterrents to crime and disorder.
I'm gonna try to move along a little bit, just thinking about some of these other goals. That's okay, Paul. And, you know, and again, this is in the context of thinking about the services that the city provides, all of the services. And the next one is being inclusive, fair, and just, which I think we're sort of touching on that a little bit. Is there room for improvement in the city and being more inclusive, fair, and just? You know, what does the city do well? We can just kind of discuss that from both perspectives. Any thoughts about that? And you know, this is, I think, you know, all folks in the public sector have always sort of had this on their radar, but it's more acute, I think, in recent years. And you know, it's part of it's a focus of the plan as well this time around. So, any thoughts about what works well and maybe where is there room for improvement in the city? That's you, Kelsey. So is South Burlington's carrying out everything in a way that achieves this goal already? You can't think of anything now that maybe where there is room for improvement? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, it's hard to put a finger on something that is relatively new. I don't think we've got the data for how we aren't fair and just in certain areas. And certainly the first topic that would crop up would be housing. And are we fair and just with our distribution of housing within the city? So I think that's a place you can start. Similarly, access, as described by the other speaker, you know, how to get to the library if you're disabled, and any of the access issues for people who don't own cars in the city as well. So, you know, it's a wide-ranging subject to say, oh, what are we doing great? We can dive into 25 different areas and say, well, we've got policies as we do in the school system, but it's a human-based issue, and we want to be treated equitably. We had appraisals and reappraisals within the city, and I chair the Board of Civil Authority, and we did that process for appeals. Well, of course, 90% of the people who came in front of the board were affluent and had homes whose values were large. And so they were the ones with the wherewithal to come in and appeal, and certainly also ones motivated because there were more dollars on the table. But by comparison, we weren't being perhaps as fair and equitable for people who had more modest homes, or perhaps, you know, condominiums, things of that sort. So that's just one example of an area where access, both physical access and that financial access and wherewithal or the knowledge that goes with it, allows you to play the game better or to take advantage of things that folks who are at the lower end of that leverage don't know about. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks. And, you know, something that you said at the start just struck me, which is, you know, we still have a lot to learn about this topic and collect information about this topic. We have all kinds of information about the other services, but this is something that's new and emerging with a big focus on it. So there's probably some room for improvement just from that perspective. Any other folks want to talk about this topic? Yes.
You know, who shows up? You know, who shows up at conversations like this? And so I think it's the city council has done a great job in creating some diversity on the city committees when people show up. But there's just an awful lot of people who aren't interested in getting involved or having a say. You know, it's just not on the radar screen of a big percentage of the population to actually say something about what they want or need. And I don't know how to address that.
I'd take that one step further to say it's not always about what people want to say, but you know, if you have 2 jobs and single parent, like how are you going to go to a city meeting? Like, I think there's a lot of people who maybe have something to say, but don't have the resources to
Right.
be able to like get here
So
tonight.
how do you access everybody's needs? you know,
Right.
better?
Right. And, you know, there's nothing the city could be doing differently to try to remove some of those barriers to make it easier. And, you know, whatever, there's probably all kinds of techniques that maybe could be, you know, put into place, but there's resource constraints to that too. But I think it's good just to start with the question and recognizing it as an issue. Yes. Barb, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I heard correctly, and I think that was Donna who was talking. And I want to tag on the back of I have a great concern about this process. That those of us who are here are the ones who have time, who make time. But is this the best way to really get the information from a larger segment of the population? Maybe this is okay for the preliminary conversation, but as we look at some of the topics that are coming up, I don't think that we're going to get representative voices unless we look at other ways to get data. I mean, even the survey that they did, I don't remember when, about how we should spend some of the dollars, got more responses. And so what are we doing in this process to really try to get as much input from as many different places and from the people who, with some of the things that we're talking about, who use these services the most, and or the people who really need some of these services the most? How are we really going to know enough of that information? So I hope that the city will think about other ways to get input into the process rather than the 20 or so people who are here tonight. And there may be more when we get to other topics. But, you know, we really haven't talked about public works or some of those things, except in kind of general terms. I don't know that that's necessarily why any of us are here. I'm just sort of pointing that out. But as I wander the streets, you know, I hear different kinds of comments. So I hope that those engaged in this process will think about a number of ways to obtain input before we get to the point of a draft plan and then something the city council is going to embrace, just for what it's worth.
Thank you, Barb. Just a quick, Kelsey from over here. Hi. Just a very quick response to that. We do have an online poll. It was actually just launched today, and it's quite short, and it's mostly related to the vision and goals statements that we've been talking about. We also have an open-ended online comment box, online comment form. So when all this information is being advertised, it's being advertised with the website, and that's where the poll and the comment box would be. So the intention being that someone who can't go to a 7 p.m. on a weeknight public meeting may have, 10 minutes on a Saturday morning or something else to submit a written comment. The other thing that we've been able to do is speak to our staff departments and try to, it's not hearing directly from people, but it's a reasonable proxy in some cases for the populations that they see on a daily basis. So talking to fire, talking to police, talking to public works, talking to the library, to rec and parks. These are all people that are interacting with completely different populations than planning might be. So we're doing a bit of sort of direct, open-ended sort of online submission work that would be, it's available 24/7, and also getting some generalized information from our staff department. So that's what we've been able to do in this particular case.
I think that's more expansive than it appears on its face. So that's a great thing. And it might be that I'm thinking about some places where people may not have internet access or may not be able to use it, but you could take a paper form of the online survey and have some of those around in places. Just another thought. And maybe a place where those for whom English is not their first language could get some help.
Thank you very much, Barb.
Just a thought. Thank you. I'm pleased to hear the kinds of things you're doing.
Thanks, Kelsey. Paul, was there something? Is there anything else that people would like to say about inclusive, fair, and just? Anne? Oh, Anne left the room. Yeah, so let's move on to the next goal, which is climate resilient, and meaning emphasizing sustainability for long-term viability of a clean and green city, being resilient in the face of climate change. So again, it's like, what is the city doing well when it comes to climate change? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to community services, what is the city doing well as it relates to climate change, being climate resilient?
I mean, I'll just jump in to maybe spark something. I think it's fantastic that South Burlington has a stormwater utility. It's not necessarily what people think of when they think directly about climate resilience, but it is flooding resilience, it is runoff resilience, and having a public works department that has tackled that head on and created a stormwater utility is frankly ahead of most places, and a really good step.
Yes.
Great thing in eliminating the ability to use fossil fuels as the major heat source in new buildings. That's we're second after Burlington to do that. And it's really necessary because of our growth here. Not all the state is going to be willing to do that, but as a growth area, it's really showing a lot of leadership that we did that. And I think in terms of services, it's, as Jesse Baker pointed out, it's important to enforce that at the local level, and enforce the energy codes as well, because that's another thing that the state does not do for residential construction. There's no enforcement of those codes for residential. We don't currently have that in place, but it's something that's being looked at and budgeted for. I don't know if it's still in there. Kind of as a growth area, it's a really critical topic because those are very expensive things to try to fix after they're built.
Okay, great. Those are two diverse examples, stormwater and then getting fossil fuel out of the city buildings. Are there other community services, city services, where the city's doing a good job with climate change, or feel free to talk about where there's room for improvement as well? I mean, we were talking about transportation earlier, and some of that kind of overlaps. Seems like, there's positives and negatives in South Burlington on that side. Just to seed a few thoughts. I've lost the. Sorry, we've lost you on our laptop. Anybody online want to add to this?
Yeah. Oh, I would just, it seems like the F-35 comes in at every point on our agenda here tonight. This is an airplane that burns a gallon of jet fuel every 3 seconds, 22 gallons a minute. And it's right in the middle of our city. We're responsible for its emissions, whether we count them or not. And there are hundreds of these F-35 flights every month, particularly blasting low-income and minority populations. So it's like, why are we not focusing our attention on doing something about it? It's worse than, it's not just an elephant in the room. It's like a disaster, a catastrophe for climate in our city. We need to take action, and we have the authority to do it. We could pass ordinances establishing minimum passenger mile per gallon standards. We could pass, the FAA doesn't regulate military jets. We could pass noise standards. We could pass ordinance to protect our open land, our 44 acres, so it can go back to housing. There's a lot we can do to solve this central problem affecting every area of our city and do something about it. And I hope that it'll find its way into the plan.
Thank you. Okay, beyond anything else, I mean, this is a pretty big topic. Yeah, please go ahead. Okay.
well. This is a topic that we've discussed around a lot already. And done quite a few things. I mean, making a lot more electric charging stations available, particularly in condominium communities. Because people complain that when they live in condos, their associations won't let them do a lot of things. You know, everything from solar to car charging, you know, because the land is owned is by the community. It's not individually loaned. And so there's a lot of restrictions in condominium associations on what people can do to reduce their own energy usage and even have electric cars, you know, plug-in electric cars. So that's, I think since there's so many condominium communities in South Burlington, I think that would be a huge one for the city to try to address in a more proactive way. That's kind of a big one. And another one from the standpoint of public works, you know, we've been asking a little bit more every year, get a little bit more for painting the side stripes, the fog lines on the roads, and making them wider so that more people are buying e-bikes all the time, and we have to get it to the point where people feel safe using those e-bikes, where they can't use an off-road facility and you have to go on the road. It's just so much safer if you have a slightly separated bike lane. And in Burlington, you know, where it's wide enough, they've actually added posts or at least double painted lines and repaint those lines every year. Because once the line is gone, you can see a lot of cars, they go as far to the right as they possibly can when there's no line there. And those are a couple of things to at least make it, well, and then painting and maintenance of crosswalks, sidewalks where there's no sidewalks. There's a lot of things that once people feel safer doing them, they'll be more likely to try getting out of their cars a bit more. But we'd love to do a survey. We've been asked one of the things we'd love to put on the survey is what will it take to get you out of your car? Or at least into somebody else's car, you know, and, you know, sharing, whatever, you know, just, you got to cut down your usage. If you had to cut down your usage by 5% every year, how would you do it? Or 2.5%, I think is the number.
Mhm.
By 2.5%, how would you do it? And kind of how can we make that easier for you to do?
And I guess along with that, it's not exactly the climate piece, but kind of with bike safety. So my husband bike commutes over to UVM from near the airport neighborhoods, Chamberlain neighborhood. You know, usually more than once a day, and like he's seen in the like 15 or I guess it's 18 years we've lived there, and he's been doing this, like a really big change in driver behavior. And he actually got hit by, you know, 2 different people's side mirrors in the last year, you know, and just seeing, you know, cars just not fearing being pulled over anymore. And I guess, I don't know if it's because,
Running red lights.
you know, your services are just so overtaxed that there isn't as much kind of proactive kind of traffic policing going on, or if people just, you know, feel like there isn't as much policing going on, so they're just like driving erratically, and it really makes a big difference for bikers who, you know, are becoming, in my opinion, more scared.
And pedestrians, pedestrians too.
So
Like crosswalks. There's one notorious one that I cross a lot as a pedestrian and a bicyclist, and that's the corner of Swift and Kennedy. And you know, there's very clearly a lighted sign up there that says no turn on red, and yet, boy, you don't dare step out when the crosswalk sign goes, because half of the time somebody is just there ready to turn right in front of you. And it's happened too many times. So I think I'm not the only one this is happening to.
no,
And that's
so-
a very heavily used pedestrian crossing too. And it's just somebody's gonna get hit. Of Dorset and
Or Swift and Dorset. By Wheeler?
No, this is the one right at Kennedy.
By the high school?
By the high school. Right by
Okay,
the high school.
Dorset and Kennedy. Yeah.
That one's the worst. I mean, you expect it to happen up at Swift and Dorset, but you don't really. Now I do expect it to happen, but it's, I think that there's a few places where cameras, even if they're not being used, it's like having cameras there where at least there's somebody who thinks they're going to get a ticket and then actually start issuing some tickets to get people to, get it on people's radar screens. If it says don't turn right or red, don't do it.
So it feels like, unfortunately, our food services are spread so thin that can't be happening. There's just not as many cars on the road, and people feel like they can just go crazy in their car. It really reduces safety and kind of the feel of safety. Which is important.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. No, we're getting pretty close to
Ready?
8:30, but I know we have more questions, but I just want to know. Please go ahead.
Hey, you calling me?
Yes.
Got a lot of things, but I'm just going to jump off on what Donna said. She mentioned condominium associations and developments where we're restricted. We live in a townhome in Dorset, the village at Dorset Park, and the association makes decisions about all of those things that are on the exterior of our homes and around us, the land, the common land that we have. And I think, on a higher level, I don't know if it's 30,000 feet or not, but basically I think we have over 3,000 multifamily units in the city, I think it is, out of about 85 or 80, less than 9,000, I think, somewhere around 9,000, say. That's a good chunk of our residences, the units that are multifamily dwellings. So if we could do something possibly to really be proactive in going out to associations and working with associations on and educating the communities and seeing if the city couldn't be providing some support and education and facilitating something with the various associations around some of these things that we're all concerned about, whether it's stormwater. I think I met Tom years ago when we went through having all of our stormwater ponds reduced, and that was great. I mean, we all learned about stormwater that summer. But we also are surrounded, we have 6 associations in our neighborhood, and some of us use pesticide or used fertilizers and some of us don't. They goes into our pond and we watch things grow in our pond. It would be nice if we had, some education and try to get our association, I think a lot of associations like this, but to get us working in a common, with common goals around some of these things like, the lawns and everything. But last winter, I watched them take down huge trees behind our unit, and it was breaking my heart to watch them take down these huge trees because pine needles fall on the tennis court nearby. So it's just, do we plant more trees? We took down trees, and I'm not talking about street trees because that's a whole another topic, but our neighborhood, we could be replanting trees. So there's those things. Don and I have had a conversation about solar on our roofs. Well, some of us would probably choose to do that, but we live in our association's not going to let us do that. Part of that's because of just the aesthetics of it and for whatever other reasons. So anyway, I guess my point is that I think we could be more mindful and more proactive as a city at how we interact, how we provide information and technical assistance to parts of our population, our residents. A big chunk of us live in multifamily units and are governed by associations, and that's both that could be a really I think, great and efficient way to reach a lot of people in the city to impact on some of these things that we want to look at when it comes to climate action. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you. That was a great comment. It's like a partnership opportunity, it sounds like to me. Are there any other comments on climate change? And maybe there's one more goal left. I don't know, Paul, did you want to just keep going? What's your, Paul and Kelsey?
The fourth goal
Is
opportunity oriented. I think maybe open it up for, we just started a few minutes late, just maybe open it up for
Yeah, okay.
thoughts that didn't fit into other categories.
Yeah,
Because this was the what wasn't ranked for,
right,
but maybe sort of a summing of what did we miss? Like what else?
right. Well, there you go. I don't know if you can hear that. But so there's one goal left. It's opportunity oriented, which is be supportive and engaged member of the larger regional and statewide community. And we talked about that a little bit, like it came up earlier. I think Chris Sullivan, is that his? Shaw, sorry. About just connecting to the communities around South Burlington as an example of that, and being, a regional partner. But so are there any thoughts about what's, again, this is from the community services perspective, partnerships maybe with the surrounding communities or beyond, and just any other thoughts that you have at this point as we kind of get towards wrapping up tonight, thinking about community services. Is there anything, really important maybe that you really wanted to say and didn't get a chance to say within the context of how we were framing this?
Sure, this was one that actually came up in the climate task force. But we have at least 3, maybe 4 different trash haulers that come around our neighborhood every week. And it just seemed that from a transportation standpoint, if each community or each neighborhood, even if it was still done privately, limited to 1 trash hauler every other week, and not only that would save a lot of resources, it probably would cut down on the amount of trash thrown away too. A couple of goals for the city there, and hopefully it would save a lot of money too.
So I was we didn't talk a whole lot about public works tonight. I mean, obviously your great stormwater program, which you know a lot about, but there's so many other parts of infrastructure that you take care of, and we're like constantly expanding with new neighborhoods and new housing. And I guess I just wanted to say that I think it's important to somewhere get in the plan that we need to be expanding budget and maintenance and everything that goes along with all that extra infrastructure, not just people infrastructure we talked about, but the physical infrastructure that, Tom and your group is taking care of. And I just want to make sure that didn't get missed, because I don't know exactly where else that might come up in our other sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the roads, it seems like, how long do we get out of a resurfacing? Because I was just looking at our.
Depends on the road.
Yeah, I'm looking at our street and our neighborhood, and I'm like, I don't know why, but it seems like after 3 years, it's full of cracks. And then the next year, it's got huge potholes in it. It's like, does that seem like a short amount of time between resurfacing, like 4 years?
Wouldn't be, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know why that happened. If they just didn't put a proper base down or what, but that road really goes by fast.
It's a challenge.
Really big challenge, yeah.
Right.
I don't think that's what I'm talking about.
Right. We thought if there was. Yeah,
But now we have a budget to repair this year. Planning.
Yeah, I mean, even getting to the cracks filled would save a lot of.
Budget for that now,
Yeah,
So
it would
some
save
of
a
that-
lot.
I think as you grow, you have more and more assets, more and more things to take. Not the new things that you want. And so there's always going to be that sort of tension between those two things, taking care of what you have, but also doing new stuff. So, and that's directly related to community services.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else anyone else would like to raise tonight? And, maybe, Kelsey, you probably want to just review the meetings that are coming up, because this is just the first of 11 meetings.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be some of these topics will come up again.
Yeah, something that's become pretty clear in this meeting is that a lot of the topics that we're dealing with are very overlapping. So there are things that came up today that could as equally have come up in our natural resources meeting or a transportation meeting or something else. So that's something that I would encourage people to do if you have the time and energy, frankly, to attend more meetings. And if you have other comments that are situated in other topics, that would be great. There are 10 additional meetings, 4 of which are geographically based. So if you live or work or interact with a particular area of the city, I would encourage you to attend those meetings for your particular. And otherwise, there is a website on our city website. If you look for City Plan 2024, that will take you there. And as I mentioned before, an online poll and an online open-ended comment form for anything else that you would want to be adding. Next week, we have three of these meetings, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday is, I forget how we phrase it, jobs, here we go. Jobs, Business, and the Economy, which is hosted by the Economic Development Committee. Wednesday, we have Energy and Climate Change, hosted by the Energy Committee. And Thursday, we have Northwest Neighborhoods. So those would be the same time, 7 o'clock, either in room 301 here at City Hall or online with the exact same link that you used today. So unless there are any other comments, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming today, for spending your time, for contributing your thoughts, and please do feel free to use those online resources. You can also email me or our planning department. Mine's kpeterson@southburlingtonvt.gov, or you can email planning@southburlingtonvt.gov and submit any thoughts you have by email, or there's the online forms, as I mentioned. Over the spring and summer, as I said in our timeline, this will all be in front of the Planning Commission. So those are also public meetings, and those happen the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of any given month. So yeah, thanks again for everybody for coming. I think this is a great discussion, and I appreciate your participation.